Mask up this, that, pedals. So we gotta epoxy prime all this. With that being said, let's get to priming these things. Got this thing set up. 4 sawhorses. Not much room here, but there's not much painting back here anyway. As you can see, some rust in there. Couldn't blast this would warp, so I'm gonna have to sand this here. Couldn't do this either, this would warp like no tomorrow. Tell there's lots of filler in here even. So I will give you a couple tips and tricks. Whenever you're doing a car restoration, you cannot blast the roof because it's flimsy. Like you can see it flexing. Any flat panels on these, they just warp. That's why you can't do any of this stuff. So we finally got these cars ready for paint or for primer. Just getting suited up here. They're all set up on sawhorses. A few things left in this one, so I did have to mask a few things out. So I finally got these things cleaned out. It literally took us all day to blow them out and vacuum it. There's so many nooks and crannies. You gotta think like all the sand sitting up in the headliner, and then here, and then there's rusted out cross members, so it all sits in there. We even swept the booth once. Yeah, then I started blowing out more. Yeah, you blow these things off about 8 times before it seems to get everything out. Then you vacuum out what you can. It's kind of a super long process. It's not really that enjoyable either. So when we're priming these cars, we actually spray 2 coats of epoxy primer on it. So the reason we put 2 coats of primer on is we want to make sure we're filling that blast profile, and then if there was any pitting in that old metal, that at least it's going to kind of fill the pits a little bit. It's better to fill it with epoxy than have air entrapped in there. It also makes it look a lot better because when they're going to spray this car, they're going to spray with an HVLP, which is going to be a very thin coating, like maybe a mil or 2 on it. So when we can put like 4 mils in one coat with the airless, then, you know, it's going to give it that build. And then you do have some, you know, when you sand it down, then you still have something to work with before you hit the blast profile. doing stuff like this, we don't really use too big of a tip. I'm pretty sure I was using like a 412 is typically what I use for primer. And you could go a little bit bigger, you know, like a 13 or 14, but the reason we don't do that is there's just so many corners to try and get here and get there. Then you're just gonna getting runs, and then if you have runs, then you have to sand it, and then that just takes a lot of time. You're better off to slow it down a little bit. Know you're not gonna get some runs. Put 2 coats on it, because if you sand it or have to take off the runs, you're probably gonna have to spray it with primer again, and then you're just wasting more time. Then one really amazing thing about this primer that we actually really like, and so does the customers, is the wait window for respraying it is 1 year. So you could just, like, you know, scuff it up a little bit. They say you don't have to, but I honestly would. But scuff it up a little bit, and you could paint over it. It just kind of gives you a bigger window to work with. As always, guys, I really appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.